It's MAGA Uncovered Day. It's a Wednesday, and welcome to the show. This is Ron Filipkowski. He's my buddy and partner in crime. We've got a lot to uncover in the world of MAGA today. Thank you very much for joining us. Sorry, I was just choking on my own opening. We should mention before we get started that literally a few moments ago, Ron, there is a scrum going on outside the Fulton County. It's not the jail, is it? Is it the jail? Yeah, I guess it is. Where Giuliani's just been booked. I think Sidney Powell might have been in earlier. People aren't quite sure whether Powell was in or not. Some of them are trying to go in like late at night to avoid the cameras. So, and then Giuliani, after having his mugshot taken and everything else, he kind of came out, and it reminded me of the booking that he made at Four Seasons Total Landscaping, where he just had to kind of throw together a press conference. In this situation, he was trying to do a press conference. Nobody was ready for it. The cameras were all like piling onto him. There was like microphones everywhere. You couldn't really hear him. I mean, Giuliani, he's just a bit of a mess these days, isn't he? You know, the hair dye was running down his face, and he just again denied everything and said it was a witch hunt. Fani Willis, I should say, is enemy of the state. You know, public enemy number one. I mean, these people they're not going to go quietly, are they? They're fighting this to the end.
Yeah, to say Rudy's a mess is an understatement. You know, in his child support case, he claims he's broke. You know, he doesn't have any money.
Yeah.
And he say he doesn't have any money now, but he flew there in a private jet to Georgia today. Right. So I don't know where maybe that was free. I don't know. But then he shows up. He has no lawyer. He's apparently still trying to find someone in Georgia who will represent him, probably that he can afford.
Does he need a lawyer? He can't represent himself, I take
it. Well, he represented himself today in the bond negotiations. Yeah. So, I mean, that's the other funny part is he's basically like rolls into Fani Willis's office and is like negotiating the bond terms himself, which is pretty funny. And he got a $150,000 bond. Yeah. So, yeah. And then he gives the impromptu press conference where he claims that, he was just giving legal advice. So the thing is, he stepped outside of a role as an attorney in this case. He wasn't an attorney. He was, the impetus to help mastermind him and Eastman to make this scheme work and put it together. So lawyers represent clients in court. They don't take part in their crimes. So the defense that I was just giving legal advice that him and Eastman gave, no, they were active participants in the conspiracy. And that's what puts them on the hook here.
It's so interesting how this is playing out, because, I'm still trying to take the position that I think that, this is not going to have the happy ending that a lot of Democrats are looking for. I still think that the likes of Donald Trump will slip through the fingers of justice here in America. But, I'm prepared to sit on the fence and give the justice system the benefit of the doubt. But I do kind of enjoy seeing these moments like this with Giuliani, where it's just a total bun fight and nobody knows which way is up. I mean, ultimately, at the end of the day, he showed up, and all of these people that have been indicted, they've got until Friday this week to show up. Trump is showing up tomorrow. His bond is $200,000. I mean, it's kind of. It's rather sweet in a way, isn't it? That all of these people involved are being drawn like magnets to the Fulton County Jail.
I think we got to the point where after January 6th happened, everybody thought, I think all of us thought, oh, indictments are coming. People are going to be, at least by the summer, we're going to have. And so I think there was a lot of anticipation. Then there was the anger stage that we all went through for the next year or more, where we're just furious that nothing is happening, and we keep hearing about subpoenas and people flipping and this and that, and I think that the reason why maybe this is cathartic for some of us is it's finally here. The charges are finally out, things are moving, things are happening, and we've waited over 2 years. So I think that's it. Even though we have nothing like solid and tangible yet, nobody's in jail, nobody's convicted. It's still, at least we know where we're headed, I
often talk about, the collapsing democracy in the US. And I try and take the position that it's already collapsed. People are saying, oh, it's hanging by a thread. And I'm like, you're kidding. The thread snapped months ago. And I take that position because I really want people to think long and hard about the fact that, other countries are looking at the US, which they've always held up as being this kind of great democracy, and seeing that it really is on its knees. I just want to show, before we kind of get into the depths of these conversations, I want to show this clip that you posted on X, or whatever the hell it's called now, about what went on in Tennessee. Because if this is not proof that your right to free speech, your right to protest, and all of those things, in addition to the vote that make up a truly democratic and free country, I mean, here's the proof that it's kind of broken, certainly in Tennessee.
Is this what democracy looks like? No.
Wasting our time.
Is this what democracy looks like?
So we're in time. Y'all won't do this for people who bring guns to school. You have to drive me.
Sure, there's a lady back there holding a cell phone, standing up and looking to leave the room.
This is not what democracy looks like.
These are mums peacefully protesting. Just give us some context of this room, and seeing state troopers dragging silent protesters, holding signs, not making any noise, dragging them out. Is
Yesterday they forced reporters out of the rotunda. The legislature's back in session. There were some reporters there from Tennessee Holler that were in the rotunda who are liberal progressive reporters, but they cover the Capitol every day, year round for a long time. There are some journalists who are activists who kind of create problems. That's not these guys. I mean, they're just progressive journalists, but they're not people that are like throwing things and stuff. So they were forced out the day before. So I was already aware of that. And then when this happened, I said, my God, Tennessee is Republican state, but it's not overwhelmingly Republican state, but it's one of those many Republican states with that, 5 to 8% majority that has gerrymandered the hell out of their state. So they're way overrepresented in the legislature. North Carolina is another one. Kentucky is another one. They all fit the bill of these states that are maybe Republican by 3 to 8 points, but the legislature is like 2/3 or 3/4 Republican because of how they've rigged things. So that's the case in Tennessee. And you saw they expelled the 2 black Democratic representatives last year who were reelected again, so they couldn't keep them out. And now you've got this. What this clearly shows is that the First Amendment means absolutely nothing. And what these people are protesting are all the new gun laws that Tennessee just passed. Well, you heard her mention there how Tennessee now allows guns in school, not the students, but adults. So if I, as a dad, am going on campus to see my son at a baseball game or talk to his teacher, I can bring a pistol with me onto the campus, which is crazy. You can walk around in the Capitol building there with guns. So this is what these people are protesting. And as you can see there, she's silently holding a small sign in her lap. So the 2 Democrats who got expelled, they were yelling and causing a scene and things like that. So even though it's ridiculous that they got expelled, you can at least make an argument that they lack decorum. These women weren't doing anything. They were just sitting there with signs.
And this proves the point that I keep trying to make time and time again, that because we have a different view from the federal government with Joe Biden sitting in the president's chair at the moment, it's not stopping these states from behaving in truly fascist ways. And there was a big story that the Associated Press has been running the last 2 or 3 days talking about sheriffs in certain states who are just ignoring any federal diktat and just doing whatever the hell they like.
Right.
And they have, very extremist and far-right views. And as we know, those far-right views permeate through sheriff's offices down to deputies. And we've seen it in the military as well. These poor young guys are watching Fox as their news channel in military facilities. So whilst there is this powerful campaign from progressive, true kind of Democrat free thinkers out front, what's going on behind the scenes and in courtrooms and in school board meetings and in, sheriff's deputy offices is this kind of extremism, this domestic terrorism, this anti-democratic rhetoric.
And then when you have elected Democrats around the country who do uphold the law, like Fani Willis, like Andrew Warren in Tampa, like the state attorney for Orlando, these Republican governors remove them or go after them.
As we've seen,
and they're trying to do with Fani Willis
in Florida. We've seen that as well with Ron DeSantis. Just not even thinking about the optics of this. The optics of removing somebody who's been democratically elected because you don't like the way that they are doing their job. Not even considering the optics of how fascistic it looks to behave in this way. And that's my concern. It's like if these leaders, these MAGA Republicans had a kind of moral compass, they'd be like, oh, I don't want to be seen to be doing this. Even in an election year when DeSantis wants to be the president, doesn't seem to see any problem with removing democratically elected people.
And what you just saw there in that video of Tennessee, what a terrible look for them. What a terrible look for the Republican Party.
Yes.
What Democrats need to learn from Republicans from tactically is that if that had been the reverse, Republicans would be running that in ads like all over the country. Even though it's a local Tennessee thing, they would say this is the Democratic Party.
Right.
If it was the other way around. Democrats tend not to do that as much. And I think they should. That should have been a major national story. That should have been everywhere among the media. Democrats should have been talking about it. And it really wasn't. It was kind of like a story on social media. And that was about it. And I really think that Democrats should make much bigger deal out of these kinds of incidents.
And it makes me think, just timing wise, that, Trump talks about Vladimir Putin like, they're best buddies, and he has a huge respect for him, as he does with any dictator. And an increasing number of GOP operatives and Republican lawmakers are siding with Russia rather than Ukraine in the war. And today we hear, as we all predicted, that the Russian mercenary leader of the Wagner Group, General Prigozhin, has been basically executed. He's been shot out of the sky in his private jet, clearly by the Kremlin. Anybody who knows anything about aviation saw that plane was not flying down. It had lost a wing and it was falling out of the sky. Apparently, either an explosion on board or it was shot. It was actually at an altitude of 35,000 feet, so you couldn't shoot it from the ground like they did when they took out that Ukrainian airliner. But this is very much the case, that this is the retribution. This is Vladimir Putin flexing his dictatorial muscles.
But you know what I heard over the last couple of weeks? A lot of MAGA politicians, media members, members of Congress say that Joe Biden is worse than Vladimir Putin, that he treats his political enemies worse than when, number one, Joe Biden has nothing to do with these indictments. They're local indictments, they're DOJ, they're special counsel. Biden has nothing to do with it. But, it's ridiculous. None of these people are in jail. They're all out on bond. They're all running around. They're all trashing the government.
Yeah.
Putin they'd all be dead if they were in Russia right now.
They would have been poisoned.
No place you can hide. He will hunt you down in other countries, and poison you.
Yeah.
So there's just no comparison. But and so for Trump to say, how much he loves Putin and respects Putin when this is what he does to people who cross him, it's disgusting.
And I always mention Alexei Navalny, who, of course, was an opposition leader, albeit a small one, but he is in jail. In fact, they've just moved him to an even more high-security jail and solitary confinement. I mean, and all he did was set up a political party to give people an alternative to vote for someone other than Vladimir Putin.
Yeah, well, his fatal mistake was pointing out some of the corruption, of the oligarchs and showing how much they were stealing from the Russian people. And he was showing their mansions and their cars and their planes and their lifestyle. That's what got him, in prison. But I mean, just think that's all it takes to get you 30 years of hard labor.
Now, tonight is the first of the primary debates for the GOP candidates, and it's Fox News, in quotes, that are going to be hosting this. Surprise, surprise, Donald Trump is not going to be there.
Yeah, well, that's no surprise. I mean, I predicted, I posted the tweet a couple months ago that he would never set foot on a debate stage if Chris Christie qualified. I said back in June, Trump will not do a debate. He will not go on the stage with Christie. I think that if Christie hadn't qualified, he would go on there because there's nobody else that he's worried about hammering away. He's not worried about DeSantis. He's not worried about Vivek. There's a few things that happen here that are interesting to me. First of all, Larry Elder was supposed to serve as Donald Trump's proxy. In other words, Larry Elder's not really running. He was just trying to qualify for the debates with Trump's help. And his only thing he was going to do is get on that debate stage and be basically a black Donald Trump. He was going to stand there and defend Donald Trump, and he was going to go after Chris Christie and all that. But the problem is he missed one of the qualifying criteria was you have to have 3 polls where you're polling at least 1%. Well, one of the polls was Rasmussen poll. And Ronna McDaniel, interesting enough, the RNC chair said, we do not accept the results of the Rasmussen poll because that poll is controlled by Donald Trump. He rigs that poll. That was kind of news that I thought was very interesting that not many people picked up on, because that's the poll that Trump always cites. He always says,
because
I'm leaning
it
big.
does lean, it traditionally has leaned conservative, right? The Rasmussen poll.
Yeah.
But so what proof does she have that
if
he's
you
controlling?
Pay them money, if you advertise with them, you will get the poll results you need.
It's so crazy. We should just say that. I mean, let me just give an opposing view for a second. Now, I don't think that Trump not attending the debates has anything to do with Chris Christie or not wanting to face anybody else. I believe that as a malignant narcissist, he thinks that he will own that stage and he will own Chris Christie, and he doesn't care about any of that stuff. In my view, he has been advised by his lawyers that he could perjure himself, that he could be in contempt, because a lot of the stuff that he says is contemptuous. And I mean, arguably, we're already saying on the MeidasTouch channel, Ben's been posting videos about this, and Popok's been posting videos about this, that some of the stuff that he's already posting, since he was told by a judge just a few days ago that the conditions were that he wasn't allowed to intimidate witnesses or, say anything that could prejudice the case in any way. That already has been blown out the water. But if he was to go on TV, because he has a routine. He's like a stand-up comic, right? Not a very funny one, admittedly, but he just goes into his routine. And his entire routine that we see at the rallies and everywhere else is abusive, and it's threatening, and it's aggressive, and it's very likely to put him in contempt.
I think that's part of it too, but I also think the moderator Brett Baer is part of it, because look, Donald Trump's worst interview since he left the presidency was the Brett Baer interview.
That's right.
Because Baer did not let him do what you just said. He didn't let him go off on tangents and deflect and change the subject. He pinned him down. Yeah. And I think Trump was also very concerned about Brett Baer.
Yeah, he really feels like Fox has turned on him.
Yeah.
And, we hear that Rupert Murdoch has made that decision. And, so be it. I'm not sure where Murdoch is now kind of pitching his tent. I don't know who else he would be to choose from that he could manipulate in any particular way. And we should just mention, before we move on, that the IT guy at Mar-a-Lago, because I found this to be one of the most fascinating stories of the last 24 hours, has now switched his lawyer. He's now not got the Trump campaign was paying for his lawyer, and he's now switched to a public defender, and consequently changed his story, and implicates Donald Trump and implicates Walt Nauta.
Yeah, this is Cassidy Hutchinson all over again.
Right.
I mean, we saw this with her. She had the Trump lawyer. What she said was that he basically was trying to get her to lie and cover things up. That lawyer's in hot water right now. I think he's facing disbarment or bar discipline proceedings. He was let go by his firm, parted ways with his firm after that. He's suing the January 6th committee over that. But yes, as soon as she got her own independent lawyer, she told the truth.
Yeah.
Same thing's happening with this guy, apparently, that, as soon as he got rid of the Trump lawyer, he flipped. And now I don't believe he's even facing charges now. I think that he's not. He's unindicted. So, right. Yes, I think that we will see this in Georgia as well with the racketeering. I think, you're going to look at people like Jenna Ellis and others who are kind of off the Trump train looking to make deals. So, yeah, I think that you're going to see that occur multiple times. Trump, because a lot of them in Georgia are complaining that the Trump PAC is not paying for their lawyers.
Yes.
Because I think they just can't afford, they can't afford to hire 13 racketeering lawyers.
They didn't want to be in this world, did they?
Yeah.
I mean, they were just doing what they thought was they were doing their patriotic duty, and the next minute they're kind of involved in this massive, court case.
Yeah.
It's very interesting. But for me, I'm going to be most interested in whether Trump's valet, Walt Nauta, flips, because currently he still has the Trump campaign lawyer. I assume he's quite naive about the law, and I mean, that's not me kind of racially profiling him. That's me just looking at him and thinking, I feel sorry for you, because you are right in the room where it's happening, and Trump's been told he's not even allowed to discuss the case with Nauta, and the guy never leaves his side. It's like they're in love.
Yeah, I track Trump almost every day, wherever he goes, on the golf course, when he travels. And now it is always there. Yeah. And I think that, I wouldn't be surprised if, he has a tracker on Nauda's car, if they track his phone, if they're monitoring his text messages. I mean, Trump might, think about it. Trump might, since he's his employee, might be paying his cell phone and cell service,
right,
and might have access to all of that. So, yeah, I think that they don't let him out of his sight. He doesn't get to go. He can't. I don't think he can go into Trump and go, you know what? I'm going to take next week off and go fly to see my aunt in Pennsylvania.
Yeah,
I don't think that ever happens.
Or in Georgia.
Trump is not going to allow that to happen.
Yeah, that's interesting. I hadn't thought about that. Keep your friends close, but your enemies closer.
The people who can put you in prison, keep them real close.
Well, the IT guy now, this is the guy who was responsible for tipping the swimming pool into the server room, right?
Yeah, yeah.
This is all
draining the pool.
Draining the pool, yeah, draining the swamp. Okay, let's talk about Kari Lake, because she is now running for Senate. Is that right? We've been predicting this, haven't we?
Well, it's pretty much a done deal. I mean, she's shifted over she's attacking Gallego, almost every day now, which is new. She used to take little shots at him, but now it's pretty much every day. Supposedly she's going to announce like first week of October. But yeah, I think it's a done deal. It's going to be a very interesting race for sure, because if it's a three-way race, all bets are off. Her and Gallego head to head, I think he would win that, but Cinema being in the mix really would screw everything up. So because Kari Lake's base is like Trump's base. It's rock solid. It's not going to, it might be only 40%, but it's not going to move. Yeah. And so that's the big question, is where are those? I've heard people say Cinema, if Cinema runs, it will actually hurt Kari more than him. I don't know. I don't have a good feel for that in Arizona, as far as like, if it's a three-way race. If it's a three-way race, I'd be very concerned, though, about Kari winning it.
We have a clip of Kari Lake denying that she's a bad candidate.
Okay.
Let's enjoy this together.
You're calling me a bad candidate. Not only is that not true, we ran the greatest campaign, I think, in the country last cycle.
Well, it isn't true. I mean, we should start by saying that. She is starting to parrot Donald Trump's
Yes,
pentameter.
everything.
Right, and that reminds me of that speech he made at the UN where they all laughed him off the stage because he was like, I have put forward I've made done the greatest policies that any president in history has ever done, and everybody from the United Nations started laughing at him. She is parroting the same style of language.
Here's what Donald Trump understands about his base. You have to win. You have to win. Winning is very important to MAGA. And so that's why he could never concede or admit that he lost, and would never admit that he lost. Because as long as he's able to convince them that he really won and that he didn't lose, he's okay. And his base does believe that he won. And so what happened after 2022? All those MAGA candidates around the country, Herschel Walker, Oz, that lost all over Brad Masters. There's so many. They conceded and went away, and they're basically have disappeared as far as MAGA is concerned, off their radar. But Lake steadfastly, just like Trump, refused to admit that she lost, and has convinced her base that she really did win. So yes, it's exactly the same playbook. I won. I really won. I ran a great campaign, but they stole it from me.
And saying, that's everyone's saying, doing her own straw poll in her mind, in her fantasy world. Yeah. Everyone's saying that I won. She even said, like, when I walked down the street, everyone I talked to said, we voted for you, Kari.
And I had signs everywhere, just like Trump.
Yeah.
We saw Kari Lake signs everywhere. Of course, I must have won.
Let's talk about the psychological element to this just for a second. I mean, I just made a video for 5 Minute News and MeidasTouch that talks about whether Trump, because he wants to use the argument that he was told that he'd won, and that's why he, asked for more votes, is because he'd been told he'd won the election. But it became clear to me that, if you're doing a Stop the Steal rally, and if you're having to phone Brad Raffensperger and ask for one more vote than we already have, you've lost, right? That psychologically, you've lost, or you wouldn't have picked up the phone, or you wouldn't have arranged the rally, or you wouldn't have got the fake electors, or you wouldn't have got your mob to storm the Capitol. All of this is because he knew he lost.
Yep.
Is it the same with her? Is it the case that she knows that she lost, but she just cannot admit to it, and psychologically she just keeps, she started the lie and now she has to complete the lie?
With her, that's a very good question. I don't know for sure, but let's just talk about Trump for a minute, because I think she's so crazy that she might actually believe she won.
Well, this is it. I'm thinking they could be different.
She might be a little different. She might be crazy and he's more manipulative.
Yeah.
But let's just take it with this. This was not a situation where this happened organically, where people came to Trump after November and said, we found all this fraud. You really won, Mr. President. And he said, oh, is that right? No, that's not what happened. No. What happened is Trump said, I won, go find some fraud.
Yeah.
Right. So it's like, this is the ending I want to get to. Now you go find me the stuff that helps me get to that ending. And what proves that even more is that 6 months before the election, he was saying almost every week, if I lose, the only way I lose is if they steal it.
That's right.
And you heard Steve Bannon say, we're just right before election day, say, no matter what the result is, we're going to get up and say we won. And we're going to say it election night before even all the ballots are counted. So they gave the game away over and over again. So when he's going to try and now argue, like, I truly in good faith believed that there was fraud, that's all nonsense. Because
he was even saying it with Hillary, though. I found a video the other day where he was interviewed with Hillary Clinton. And this is in 2016, and he's been asked about the peaceful transfer of power, and he's like, yeah, if I win. And it's like, whoa, I mean, this is clearly a mindset that, this kind of autocrat wants to take control of the whole federal government and not let it go ever.
There is no doubt if he lost in 2016 to Hillary, he was going to say that it was stolen.
Right.
There's no doubt.
Right. And we should remember that, we should remember that. I actually have as my pinned tweet one of those moments where Donald Trump says that, he'll only agree to a peaceful transfer of power to a second Trump presidency. And that, I don't know why it didn't worry more people, Ron. Like, why didn't he just carry on?
He's saying that now. A couple of times he's been asked, well, you're only going to be able, because Ron DeSantis's argument is, I'm going to be able to do 2 terms and Trump can only do 1.
Yeah.
And there was one time where a right-wing interviewer actually brought that up and said, well, DeSantis is making this argument. You can only do 1 term. And Trump looked at him and said, well, I'm not so sure about that. We'll see about that.
And again, Vladimir Putin, who's been in office for 22 years, again has rewritten the rules to say that he can just keep going. And this is who Trump looks up to. Let's look to Eric Trump now. We don't see or hear much of Eric Trump. Don Jr. seems to get all of the glory, and Ivanka's like gone on the missing list. She doesn't want to have anything to do with any of this. And apparently she's got like marriage problems as well, so we'll let her do her business. But Eric Trump is now claiming that all of the money that was generated during the Trump presidency that should have been, that could be questionable, and he's talking about drinks here in the Trump hotel or whatever, are going to be repaid back. I'll play the clip and you can explain what it's all about.
If somebody came into one of our hotels when my father was president, they were from a foreign country, a government official from a foreign country, and we found out about it, what we do? We donate all the money for that, that margarita that they bought at the bar, donate it back to the United States Treasury.
Yeah, prove it.
I listen to a lot of Eric Trump interviews because he's pretty deep into that QAnon world now, because he's one of the lead speakers at these QAnon conferences, the We Awaken America things. And a lot of the interviews that he does that are really crazy are when he goes on these people's podcasts. He said that, and then a few days before that, he said they were the most honest family that has ever been in the White House, and they never made $1. None of them ever made $1 off their government service. They profited nothing. They lost money, right? So, yeah, I mean, that's just Eric. Of the three are very interesting. Ivanka always has this kind of hurt, like, I don't understand why everybody's mean to me. I'm just a nice person. That's her MO. Junior's MO is just this manic, crazy, yelling and screaming, ranting and raving. And Eric's mantra is he's the whiner of the kids, always crying, always whining about being a victim, how much they're being picked on and persecuted. And it's just, people love those clips because it's just so funny to see a guy who's so privileged and so wealthy, just constantly complaining about how bad he has it.
I most enjoy the Don Jr. clips that you occasionally post, where he's either drunk or he's on pills or something, but he's like slurring his words. He's in his living room with his like nice TV that's been inset by a carpenter. I love the detail and all of the trinkets and tchotchkes up on the mantelpiece. And I'm always like thinking, like, this is your life? Like, this is you living? And I'm thinking that, his wife's gone to bed and he's just left with his cell phone and he's like scrolling through the news, and he's like, right, I'm going to fix this. And then makes a video basically just criticizing everybody. It's truly telling of how desperate this whole family are.
I will say this, Eric wants nothing to do with politics. Ivanka wants something to do with politics. But as far as like running or being in government, Junior, I think, definitely plans on running for something someday in Florida, probably governor, Senate. I don't know. But I think he genuinely views himself as the MAGA successor. As the question has always been, once Trump is gone or in prison or whatever, dead, who is going to be the heir apparent? And some people thought it was going to be Junior. Some people thought it was going to be Kari Lake. Some people thought it was going to be DeSantis. But I think Don Jr. sees himself as the successor to his father. I don't think his father sees that, but he does. And he's got a decent following, but he just doesn't have what Trump has. Trump has that roguish charm that appeals to the base that likes what he brings. Junior doesn't have that. He's just
Well,
abrasive.
he's the
and
Jeremy
loud.
Strong character out of Succession. You know,
Yeah.
this is the point, isn't it? If you want to watch that show and recast everybody in your mind, it's totally possible to do so. Talking of actors, let's talk about Kevin Sorbo. Now, I don't know who this guy is. What shows has he been in? Because he's complaining that
Hercules.
Hercules. Okay, well, being a conservative or a Christian conservative is the reason why he can't get any bookings. Let's take a look.
Huge divide in our country right now, and it's perpetuated by the mainstream media, perpetuated movies, TV. I don't harbor that kind of anger and hate towards people who have a different point of view. And it was sad to me. You know, my manager and agent for so many years said we can't get you jobs anymore or work with you because people don't want, you know, because if you're being a Christian, be conservative. And I almost had to laugh at that because it's an industry that screams for tolerance, and yet it's a one-way street. It screams for freedom of speech, but it's Hollywood's one-way street as well. And that's just too bad.
Well, tolerance is a one-way street.
So I follow all these right-wing actors. You know, that's Kirk Cameron,
John Voight.
Sorbo, Voight. There's a whole bunch of them. Randy Quaid. You know, we could go on and on. Who's a Chachi, Scott Baio. You know, and they're all these washed up, you know, actors. James Woods, who haven't, you know, had a decent role in
and
decades.
don't forget the Kim Jong favorite as well.
The what?
The one who goes over to North Korea all the time. What's his name? With the
Dennis Rodman?
with that beautiful hairpiece. I can't remember his name.
I don't remember.
He's
Dennis
huge.
Rodman went over there, but he's a basketball player. But
yeah.
But no, it's just always amusing to me that they all, and Sorbo is not the only one who does this. They all complain, and they all say that the reason why they're not getting work anymore in Hollywood is because they're Republican or conservative or whatever, which is, you know, I don't know. It just seems like kind of ridiculous. It just seems like, you know, they might need to look in the mirror a little bit on their talent level.
Does he know that there's an actor's strike right now?
Well,
Could be that.
For him, the actor's strike has been 20 years long. You know?
Yeah.
Yeah. So part of it, the reason why they're saying this is because they're all out there making these independent films and they're trying to raise money for them. And that's what big thing that Sorbo is constantly doing is asking, and Voight does it too, you know, asking people to put up money and donate money to fund his independent movies. So he's using that Donald Trump playbook, which is, you know, I'm being victimized by the libs. I've been persecuted by the libs. Send me money, you know.
I mean, it's so sad, isn't it? Because, you know, the great thing about the theater and show business is it was the first industry to really accept weirdos, right? The waifs and strays. And the British theater was very well known for this, and, you know, to really give employment and support to the gay community and to people who just weren't, you know, didn't fit that kind of normal mold. And, you know, in obviously circus and in theater, and it's kind of wonderful, you know. And I feel like really, if you're going to be an actor and you're going to kind of be in that community, the first thing you would do politically is probably be as inclusive as you possibly can. Otherwise, you're just not going to get on with your colleagues.
I think it's part of being an artist. Sure, is tolerance, inclusiveness, being open to new ideas, trying new things, not being afraid to embarrass yourself or try different hair or different clothes or take chances and take risks and risk being ridiculed yourself. And I think that that's sort of a natural trait of people that tend to be more liberal or more progressive. People who are more conservative or don't want to take those risks. They don't want to gamble. They're more likely to conform.
And that's why it's so jarring,
you know?
that people like John Voight, who has had a great career in the movie business, is such a kind of staunch right-wing, like far-right, radicalized extremist. I mean, the way he talks, he makes these little videos, which I've seen many of, where, you know, they're quite dramatic, and obviously he's a great actor, so he knows how to deliver this material to the camera. And for people who don't know any better, it's quite compelling material. Okay, let's move on to Ron DeSantis, someone who is a terrible actor to all intents and purposes, really.
That's for sure.
He's just awful at pretending to be a candidate or even a governor. He's now criticizing MAGA, right? So let's take a look at old sanctimonious.
So tell me a little bit about that comment that you made over the weekend. And we played it in its full context. I know you felt that in some cases it was taken out of context. But if it was misinterpreted, explain to us what you meant in that.
Well, Martha, every Republican voter I've ever come in contact with, whether they're strong for Trump, lukewarm, or anything in between, wants us to stand on principle when you get elected or if you're involved in this process. And I think one of the big problems with our party for many, many years is people say they're going to do certain things and then don't end up following through. And so at the end of the day, it's what are we delivering for the people that have put us into office? And in the state of Florida, I can say that I have delivered more for America First principles than anybody else in the country. I mean, we've prohibited the CCP from purchasing land. We've cracked down on illegal immigration, expanded Second Amendment rights. We got indoctrination out of our schools. We have universal school choice, and our crime rate's at a 50-year low because we've done things like remove Soros-backed district attorneys. So that it's about results. And I think what you've had, the people in Congress that I was referring to that have attacked me and tried to say somehow that I was a rhino, they're putting entertainment and personality over principle. Our voters want us to stand on principle and fight for them.
Wow. I mean, Ron, that list of things that he thinks are positive policies are all like the worst case fascist scenarios. I mean, the guy should be in prison just for the list that he's using to advertise himself.
Well, only 2 seconds of his answer answered that question that she asked. Yeah. So the backstory behind this is he made a comment in an interview with his own people. It was like his own media group that he set up interviewed him. So basically they were interviewing him over this past weekend. And he made the comment that Trump supporters are like listless vessels that do nothing but sit and wait for Donald Trump to tweet something on True Social, and they get their marching orders and they run out and do whatever he says. So basically he called them a cult, and so I joked on Twitter. I'm like, oh, it's nice to see that, Ron DeSantis has adopted my talking points about MAGA. He now sounds like me. But of course, MAGA went absolutely nuts. I mean, and this might be something, again, that maybe a progressive might not be aware of, about how much that comment hurt Ron DeSantis with MAGA. So it's a time where he's supposed to be trying to ingratiate himself and win some of those people over. And then he basically calls them cultists. So this was his first interview. After that blew up and all the MAGA was going crazy, he's calling us cultists. This is his chance to clean that up. And what does he do? At the very last part of the answer, he said he tried to claim there very subtly that he wasn't talking about MAGA. He wasn't talking about Trump supporters. He was talking about members of Congress who support Trump. That's who he meant. Like, yeah, it's Matt Gaetz that's a listless vessel waiting for Trump to. I mean, that's just that just made him even more mad because it's so obviously a lie. The guy just won't own. When he finally tells the truth, which he did tell the truth, they are a cult. He didn't own it. He backed off of it right away. And that's classic Ron DeSantis.
But he has a very difficult line, doesn't he? Because he's trying to split the Trump vote.
It's impossible.
And it's impossible, right?
Yep.
So he's going for like strands of people that, they voted for Trump because he was the candidate, but, there are some things about it he doesn't like. So then DeSantis uses the America First phrase, which is in Trump's slogan. And he says, we've done more America First policies, and then lists that terrible list of things like removing people who've been democratically elected and, the border and Second Amendment rights. I mean, expanding Second Amendment rights. I mean, and as you know, because you're in Florida now, you don't even need a license to carry a gun. It's now.
You know what else he did right there, Anthony?
Tell me.
Is while he's going on there trying to smooth things over with Trump supporters, notice what he was wearing: navy suit, white shirt, red tie. He wore the Trump costume.
He probably rented it from a fancy dress costumier, just took the mask off and said, I won't be needing that. Okay, well, we could talk a lot about Ron DeSantis, but I fear that he is becoming less and less relevant. Let's talk about someone who is kind of a bit random, but I'm pleased that you tweeted about her, Kat Kamak of Florida. Tell me about her, and then I'll play this brilliant video.
Yeah. So Kat, I mean, she's a Congress member of Congress from Florida, mostly MAGA. But yeah, she kind of got her claim to fame over the baby formula controversy. She was the first one who posted a story claiming that, there was a baby formula shortage. And of course, you know how MAGA is and the right is. They all right-wing media. They pounce on things like that. And, they blew that up for weeks and weeks that, there were starving babies and we're giving weapons to Ukraine, but we have babies starving in America. Their moms can't feed them. And, they just blew it all out of proportion. And this was her, she was finally got herself on Fox News. She was all excited. So this was her big moment. And basically since that time, I've kind of been waiting to pay her back for that little stunt. And so when she took the stage at the Young Republicans Club, which is all, college kids and high school kids in Dallas, she did a little dance to entertain them. And so I often ridicule, like, the Republicans can't figure out how to connect with Gen Z voters. So this is apparently their new strategy, aside from Charlie Kirk, is to have Kat get up there and dance for him.
It's the gift that keeps on giving. Here it is. Enough.
I've
took her shoes off as well.
I've been to Young Republican, events in college and in law school, and this never happened. We all looked like, Alex Keaton in Family Ties. We were not doing that.
But there is a serious side to this, and that is that, the current, because I do think about where candidates come from. The kind of new candidates. Yeah. And obviously the Republicans are quite good at outreach, and they're trying to indoctrinate, young voters and future candidates. And, there are those who've been to Liberty University and the types of places where they can really get brainwashed into being like full-on MAGA Republicans who will fight to the death, supposedly for their country. And I just don't think this kind of current breed of MAGA Republicans, the Marjorie Taylor Greenes and the like, I don't think this will ever go away. I mean, I said last week about, that the genie will never go back into the bottle. And I get the feeling that there will always be new young people. I mean, I have a lot of faith in young people. I have young kids myself. And I really feel like those who are educated enough or smart enough or just really inquisitive enough to kind of go online and see it all and maybe have more of a younger progressive mind. I think if you grow up in a MAGA community where your parents are MAGA, and it's going to be very difficult. But if you are someone who's got a slightly broader exposure to the world, it's very difficult not to be what they would call a liberal snowflake, because the rest of the world are liberal snowflakes to their, as far as they're concerned. People who just live in the modernity rather than people that want to live in 1950, for example, or take away the vote from women, or take away healthcare from women, or any of these things where kind of white men dominate. What do you think? Do you think that we're going to see kind of more and more young conservatives kind of taking control? Because Matt Gaetz is pretty young himself, right? People like him.
We are, but what you see is a lack of substance. I mean, you're seeing like the Boeberts and people like that. The Gaetzes. Yeah, there's a lack of substance. There's a performance artist component to it. Where
performative politics.
It's about, it's almost like they're Instagram models or TikTok.
Right.
The look is important. The dress. But the problem is that the substantive message that they go out and sell to young voters backfires on them, because that message is be a Christian, get married young, have lots of kids, drop out of college, learn a trade, and toe the line, and that doesn't resonate with a lot of 19-year-olds. Because when you're that age, you want to experience everything that life has to offer. You want to sample things, you want to try things, you want to travel, you want to see new things, and then settle down at some point.
Yeah.
But they want those people to settle down at 17, 18 years old and get married and have 5 kids, and so I just don't think that their substantive message resonates. So it's all performance, and it's sort of like eating chocolate for dinner. It doesn't last very long.
It's delicious though.
Yeah.
Even temporarily, we should say. Okay, let's talk about what's been going on in Maui, obviously, with the horrific wildfires. And, now there's more bodies are being discovered, and, there's like 1,000 people missing. It's the news doesn't get any better out of Hawaii in each day that goes by. And yet, in typical style, the Republicans and the MAGA Republicans have tried to weaponize this the same as they did with East Palestine. And, on Fox, we were hearing some crazy stuff out of them. Should we just see, is it that she's like the one Democrat on the panel, isn't she? Always defending these types of stories. Let's take a look at the clip and then you can explain. Certainly better than I just have.
Okay.
But there have been so many craven lies told about the timeline of the response on this. Jesse just said his first comments were no comment, which is categorically untrue. So that was on August 13th. The wildfires started on August 8th. On August 10th, that's when a major disaster declaration occurred. He got the request from Hawaii to do that. It took him just 63 minutes to sign that.
You signed a piece of paper. I'm talking about significant public comments.
Just wait for it. And then later that day, he was in Utah talking about something else, and he opened up by commenting on what was going on in Hawaii and how devastating it was. Listen to what the governor of Hawaii, Josh Green, said. Within 6 hours, the administration met our needs with federal movement. I don't think that's ever happened before. The Maui County mayor, I wanted to say how responsive the president has been. He called me. I asked for the help that we needed. And within 2 hours, one of his cabinet members called me to answer my question. We've been getting all the help that we need.
That's the Maui mayor. Just pointing that out.
Right. And you don't think at a time when there are hundreds of people dead and there's another 1,000 people that are missing, that the Maui mayor wouldn't have said, Joe Biden is lying to you when he says that they care.
You got to be nice. You got to be nice. You have to be nice because you're hoping for something.
You're hoping for all the things that he got. The FEMA aid came in. I saw Republicans criticizing him. Why do you only give them $700? That's the FEMA limit. This thing about the ground, the hot ground, he was talking to a dog whose paws are on the ground. It's not like he's saying to
what a guy talking about talking to a dog. Are you kidding me? This is a guy who goes.
There are no depths, Ron. No depths.
This is a very important topic, and Jessica Tarloff has one of the most important jobs in television. She's sitting in the Geraldo seat after Geraldo was fired. And I like Geraldo, but Geraldo, it was time for him to go. I mean, he just didn't do his homework. He didn't prepare. He wasn't really doing what he was supposed to do on there as the token Democrat on that show. Jessica's kicking ass.
I know. I mean, I was going to ask you, did they know how good she was at this when they gave her the job? Because to me,
they
it's
just
like
care about
backfiring.
ratings. They just care about ratings, and she's good for rating. Look, that I'm just so happy that somebody is on Fox spitting truth. Some of them may not accept it, but at least they hear the other side. But this is a very, very important topic because this is a playbook that Republicans are following right now, which is every disaster that happens, the train derailment in East Palestine, the wildfires, there'll be more, a hurricane, a flood, whatever it is, any natural disaster, they are looking immediately to blame Joe Biden and the Democrats for the disaster, either making it worse, causing it, or not being responsive to the cleanup, not being compassionate, not caring enough. And I think, we have to say that the administration bungled East Palestine, the messaging. And I think Buttigieg admitted that later, because the administration tends to focus on the substance, which is the most important thing. And what they feel like, I think they had this impression like, we'll do our jobs well, we'll deliver the substance, and the rest will take care of itself. But the rest doesn't take care of itself in the modern social media world. And this has always been my criticism, is they're stuck in a time warp of like 20 years ago news cycle when it's so quick. So what did Trump do in East Palestine? Nothing of substance. But he showed up. He went in there. He flew in. He passed out some expired waters and some Goya beans.
He invited the media.
Max and flew out. Yeah. But hey, Joe Biden didn't go. Buttigieg hadn't been there yet. So Trump steals the optics. He steals the narrative. And so they tried to run the same playbook in Maui. But I think this time, thank God, Democrats are wise to this now. And Biden went there, and he went there as soon as it was practical. And they communicate, because Republicans are running the same playbook. Joe Biden doesn't care. All these people, they're making it worse. Nobody's getting any help. Nobody's getting any relief. And then he does go. And what do? They focus on, they claim that he fell asleep. Okay. When if they play like 3-second clip of him putting his head down and closing his eyes, they didn't show the before and after. Yeah. This is what they do. But thankfully, the Democratic media this time, instead of just ignoring this deceptive stuff, fought back, and they showed the full clip. And they showed that it was at a time when they were talking about the people that had died. And clearly Joe is bowing his head in sort of, reverence of that moment. So I think it is so important. And I've been beating this drum for 3 years. And I think Democrats are finally getting it. And the media is finally getting it, that you cannot ignore the propaganda. You can't ignore their non-substantive messaging and their attempt to set the narrative. You have to recognize it, see what they're doing, and fight back right away. Not 2 weeks from now, right away. And they were a little slow on Maui, but hey, I'm happy that they responded as well as they did.
Well, they were showing clips of the devastation on one screen, and then on the other screen they were showing video of Biden on vacation on the beach.
That's right. And that's what they were doing.
The optics of that are so visually damning for Biden, even though they've adjusted the timeline, and it's simply not true.
Yeah, you're showing devastation, and then you're showing, Biden, playing on the beach, or, yes. And this is what I think the administration really hasn't completely wrapped its hands around yet, is that kind of imagery is very important. Yeah. And it really is. But I think the imagery of him when he did go to Maui was good. It's just the timing of it needs to just be a little quicker.
It's such a shame that we even have to call it imagery, because, the reason he held off, and for anybody that has been anywhere when a president, whichever president arrives, in terms of the security and the motorcade and all of the drama and all of the attention that it brings, it is completely inappropriate and unsuitable for a president, or even the Department of Transportation in Pete Buttigieg. He didn't want to go to East Palestine because he didn't want to make a scene.
But Joe should have said that. Joe should have come out that day. Yeah. Went out, gave a little press conference in his driveway, and just said, look, I'm going to go, but I'm not going now because now isn't the right time. But he didn't do that. He didn't do it. He gave a no comment. So, this is the point. You can't, it's not 1996. The news cycle is hours. It's not days now,
And Steve Bannon, for his podcast, sent one of his roving reporters to Maui to kind of, dig up some dirt, and he ended up being chased away by locals who were saying that he was, wasting resources. I'll just show a short clip of this, and you can see, because it's quite a long clip. I'll just show a few seconds of this.
Yes, it is. Yes, that was one of the questions that it's, like I said, it's been burning in a lot of people's minds here.
Hey, what's up, Nick? I've been trying to reach you. Been reaching out to you on X. You're supposed to be meeting with people here. What victims have you had?
Okay, yeah. So this is so you're seeing this live right now. People actually tracked me down,
I thought you were staying in a tent. You said you were coming and staying in a tent, Nick. You're taking up resources.
I'm not taking up any resources here.
Yes, you are.
No, I want to stay with it.
I don't know how you live with yourself, man. You've seen the devastation. You've seen the people. I can see you cheering up because you know how much these people are suffering.
No, you're literally here. You just.
This guy doesn't seem to have any skills as a roving reporter. It's completely.
Well, he's not really a reporter. He's a realtor. But look, Bannon sent this guy into East Palestine. So Bannon was doing daily reports with this guy who was whipping up, furor. But see, the advantage, it worked in East Palestine because it's a Republican county, heavily Trump county. It went like 75% for Trump. So this guy went in there and all he got was able to goad these people into trashing Biden, and blaming Biden because he was able to get away with that. But so they try and do the same, run the same playbook, and they send this guy out to Maui. But what happens? Hey, the people in Maui aren't going to put up with it. And they called this guy out and they're like, hey, you're using up. He was staying in a hotel room, which was supposed to be for people that lost their homes. And he's taking up one of the rooms. So you hear him confronted. Hey, you claim you were sleeping in a tent. You're not sleeping in a tent, So yeah, this is great. And, love to see it. Love to see it. The propaganda that they were trying to whip up in Maui, it just didn't work, I don't think, except for on their narrow base.
Well, it also exposes what kind of evil they are, that they think that Maui is fair game for any kind of politics.
That's right.
That's the tragedy. I mean, and also, we haven't really touched on it. We don't really have time, but, there was so much climate change denial over this. And people just not understanding the science of it. I mean, this fire was moving at like a mile a minute, because it was being pushed by winds that were caused by climate change. And so there's so much of this, and here where I live, we've had this tropical storm, which we shouldn't be having in California. The climate change is around us all. And here the mayor, Karen Bass, has been actually saying the words climate change in every press conference. And yet, Donald Trump comes out the other day and saying, so-and-so said the first thing that came into his head, blame climate change. And it's like, it's so frustrating that only in America has climate change been politicized to this level. The rest of the world is building wind turbines and solar farms, and everyone's like taking it really seriously. And here it's just fodder for Fox News. Okay, we have to finish in a minute, but I have a final clip which I'd love you to explain to us. This is Tommy Tuberville, who's practically like a kind of clown these days. And he reckons that Trump is fighting for the Constitution, but Democrats really appreciate this as well. I'll play the clip, and then we can end with this.
And they know that if President Trump goes back in, Kimberly, they are in trouble. And so he'll fight through this. I mean, he's a fighter. And that's the reason people love him across this country. Even Democrats. There's some Democrats that love him because he will fight back for the Constitution and for the taxpayers.
And you bring up such a point, because I've been actually hearing now, from moderates, from liberals, whatever, we do have to fight for the Constitution because the Constitution is under attack in this country. It's under siege. Newt Gingrich has said this, of course, but it's becoming more, broad-based across the spectrum that people are seeing that this is outrageous, especially.
Where in the Constitution does it say you can overturn the election if you don't like the results?
Yeah. Tuberville and Guilfoyle are both claiming that Democrats are coming up to him saying how much they support Trump. Yeah. How many Democrats do you think that the two of them talk to on a daily basis? The guy trimming his hedges or something out front? No, I mean, Tuberville's been on quite a roll, of course, over the military promotions and all of that. And I think that just, and on that same show, Kim said that he was the greatest American football coach of all time, which is, he's not even the greatest coach in Alabama, but, it's just Tuberville is a problem. I mean, Tuberville is a big, big problem. He's probably become the worst senator, and that's saying a lot. The military promotions that he's holding up, the things that he says about Russia and Ukraine. This guy's either just completely compromised, full QAnon, or just really, really dumb, or maybe all three?
I'm going to go with the latter, actually, because I really feel that every time I've seen him speak, I'm just, because it doesn't help with the kind of Southern accent, doesn't help either, does it? And so, I really feel like I would love to hear him answer some hard questions. He just goes places where he's being given soft interviews. But I would really love someone, whether it be Brett Bray, I don't know, on Fox, just to kind of push him on the same thing. But what do you really mean? Let's just go back and talk about that again in some depth. The guy just can't do it.
No. I'd like him to take like a 7th grade civics quiz. Just sit down and go, Tommy, how many justices are there on the Supreme Court? How many branches of government are there? How many states are there? What's the capital of Massachusetts? And see how many he gets right.
Man, person, camera, TV. Okay, we have to finish. But Ron Filipkowski, thank you again. Always a pleasure. The next few weeks is going to really heat up, and certainly tomorrow it's all eyes on the Fulton County Jail as Donald Trump shows up to get booked. So I'm sure you'll be tweeting furiously about that at Ron Filipkowski. I'm at the Anthony Davis. And don't forget to keep your eyes on the MeidasTouch channels, certainly at MeidasTouch.com, where we have a feed of stuff dropping throughout the day. And, of course, the MeidasTouch YouTube channel. We'll see you next week at the same time here on MAGA Uncovered.